This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
How are we doing? Yeah. Ready? It's me again. Again, I thank the Rabbi Cohen, for allowing me to join you this evening, and I want to thank Rabbi Pinchas Brandeis, Chanuch Lieberman. Notice I forgot to mention my good Yedid, Rabbi Real Fuchs, for making all the arrangements, and Tavay Alechem Bracha. So this is a good one. If you waited out until now, I know the hour is late. This to me is one of my favorite subjects. We're going to talk about the Daled Golios, and we're going to talk about the changes and the transition and the shifts that we see in the patterns of the world today. We all know that there's a concept of the Daled Golios, the four exiles. Everybody knows Edom, Paras, Yavan, Bavel, but actually the order is Bavel, Paras, Yavan, and Edom. And not only is there a concept of the Daled Golios, but this is something that is merumaz in the very, very beginning of the creation of the world. The Medrash Rabbah tells us that Reish Lakish interpreted the pasuk V'ha'aretz ha'sayu v'avoyu v'choshech al pnei sahaim. Says Reish Lakish, V'ha'aretz ha'sayu. This is Bavel. Boyu is Madai. Choshech is Yavan. And the Tahaim, says Reish Lakish. Who's the Tahaim? Ze Golus Mamleches Harasha. This is the exile of the wicked nation. She'ein lohem chekar. They're so wicked. It's so endless, it cannot be investigated. Kamay hatahaim. But then the pasuk says, V'ruach Elokim rachefes al pnei hamayim, says the Medrash, Ze ruchai shel melech hamashiach. So the Golios were already predicted, they're already foretold from the beginning of time. When the Rebbe created the world, he created emptiness and darkness. This was already a remez to the coming of the Daled Golios, Bavel, Paras, Yavan, and Edom. But at least I could say, in my limited experience, when I was a kid growing up in America, if you would ask, okay, what Golos are we in? Everybody used to say we're in Golos Edom. America, the Western world, Western culture. Golos Edom. And somehow in the last 15 years, 10 years, there's been a very dramatic shift in the world. Now we're starting to hear the concept of Yishmael. And I don't have to tell you, because it's not only in America. I know where I'm staying in England, one of the largest houses of worship in the entire Europe is being built. Predictions are that in 40, 50 years, this continent will be predominantly. Is there a concept of Golos Yishmael? Are they one of the Daled Golios? They don't seem to be. The Midrashim do not refer to Yishmael as one of the Golios. Even though Reish Lakish doesn't explicitly say Golos Edom, we're not familiar in the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't refer to Edom, doesn't refer to Golos Yishmael. It's not really found in the Midrashim. Why isn't Yishmael considered one of the Golios? That's one item we would like to bring out tonight. By the way, it's interesting, if you look in the Ibn Ezra on Sefer Daniel, Ibn Ezra says the fourth Golos is Golos Yishmael, and Golos Edom is part of Golos Yavan. But the Midrashim don't say that. And the Messiah in Klal Yisrael is the fourth Golos is Golos Edom. Where does Yishmael fit in? Do we have a Messiah that in the end of days Yishmael will ascend? Who will be the last one to stand? Edom or Yishmael? Who will defeat who? Because we know that Bavel was defeated by Yavan, Yavan was defeated by Paras, Paras was defeated by Yavan, Yavan was defeated by Edom. Who will be the last nation standing right before the coming of Mashiach? It's very interesting. If you look at number 2, in Tehillim Perek Vav Pasuk Aleph, this is really the opening pasuk of the Tachnon that Ashkenazim say, Lam natseach beneginois al hashminis mizmar leDavid. By the conductor, on the eights. What do you mean on the eights? This is Tachnon, we just omit the first pasuk. Says the Medrash, the Dalid Golios are 8 Golios. Each one of the Golios is a dual Golos. How's that? And the 8th one, says the Medrash, the 8th Golos is Edom. Edom he Hashminas. The 8th Golos is Edom. Says the Medrash, how is it 8? Bavel Kazdi. You ever hear of the Kazdiim? The Kazdiim were somewhat of a knockoff of a branch of Bavel, the Babylonians. So Bavel is really a dual Golos. It's Bavel, Kazdi. There's Paras, but Paras is always Paras or Madai. The Gemara in Megillah even talks about why sometimes Paras before Madai, why sometimes Madai before Paras. Yavan, but Yavan really, after Alexander broke up into 4, Yavan and Moikdan, Alexander Moikdan, Greece and Macedonia. Says the Medrash, and Edom is Yishmael and Edom. So even though they're Dalid Golios, the Dalid Golios are broken up each one into 2. Bavel, Kazdi, Paras, Madai, Yavan, Moikdan, Yishmael and Edom. Which one is the 8th? Seems to say Edom. It's very interesting. If you look in Rashi and Zechariah, Rashi randomly quotes the pasuk al Hashminis, but Rashi gives a different order. Rashi says, "V'shepasarti malchus Nebuchadnezzar bekefo shtei umos, reisi b'medrash dalid malchios halalu, Bavel Kazdi, Madai Paras, Antiochus u'Moikdan, Edom v'Yishmael." Interesting. Rashi says Edom and Yishmael. Edom and Yishmael, that's not the order that the Medrash gives. Does Rashi have a different tradition? Does Rashi have a tradition that first will come Edom and then will come Yishmael? Even though Rashi ends off Hashminis al Edom, but that's not the order that he gives. Let's come back to that. Is there a matter of dispute? Who will be the last nation standing? Is there a machloikis midrashim between Edom and Yishmael? Between America and the Arab world? Is that a machloikis between Rashi's version of the Medrash and the Medrash? By the way, the Arizal writes, even if you say the first 3 Golios are 1 Golos, Bavel, Madai, Yavan, the last Golos is Vadai too, because the last Golos are the 2 legs. Says Arizal, the head of the monster in Sefer Daniel is Bavel, the body is Paras, the arms, Yavan. The guf is Yavan. Edom and Yishmael are the 2 legs. Edom and Yishmael, one thing we know for sure, they will be the final 2 Golios, but which one will be last? Who will defeat who? But let's ask another question. Let's go back to what we began with. Traditionally, though, they're Dalid Golios, and we don't count Yishmael. Why is Yishmael not counted? Why are they not counted? What makes they're not bad enough? I think they meet the bill. I think they're Yotzei. They can't be a Golos. Like, what are they missing as being a Golos? What do they need? What more do they need to do? They're trying so hard. They should get points for effort. So this is a question that the Maharal discusses in many of his Sfarim. Let me tell you one answer that the Maharal says, a very powerful answer, and we'll come back later to give the second answer, which the Maharal feels is more definitive. The Maharal in the Ner Mitzvah, number 8, in the Chidushei Agados, number 9, the Maharal asks this question, V'yesh b'nei Adam shoyalim. There are people that ask, V'heichan remez malchus Yishmael. Where is there a remez to malchus Yishmael? The answer, says Maharal, is let's understand, in order to be a malchus, what's the definition of a malchus? If you look in Sefer Daniel, when it talks about Bavel, it says that when the Babylonians destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they usurped Jewish malchus. Means the definition of malchus is when they take what belongs, the majesty and the royalty of the Jewish people. Malchus really belongs in the hands of Malchus Beis David. They are representative of Malchus Shamayim. But then the Goyim usurp it. Bavel usurped it. From Bavel it was taken by Paras. Yavan took it from Paras. Edom took it from Yavan. Says the Maral, that's why we find, and Rav Hutner points out, there's a symbiotic relationship. There's a relationship between Klal Yisrael and Edom. That's why the Gemara says in Megillah, if somebody says Yerushalayim is built up and Caesarea is built up, don't believe them. If someone says they're both destroyed, don't believe them. Imole hacharava. It's either this one or that one. It's one or the other. Because it's one malchus. Either we have it or they have it. But says the Maral, Yishmael is not a malchus because Yishmael does not take the power of the Jewish people. Yishmael has their own independent power. Where is the koyach of Yishmael from? Says Maral, it comes from the tefillah of Avraham Avinu. Uli Yishmael shematicha. You daven that you should have a child that's successful. Uli Yishmael shematicha. Therefore, it's possible for the Jewish people to be successful and Yishmael to be successful. It's possible for both of us not to be successful. One is not dependent on the other. And because Yishmael does not usurp Malchus Yisrael, they don't meet the bill. They're bad, they're wicked, they're powerful. They just cannot be considered a Malchus. But let's come back to the definitive answer of the Maral. The answer the Maral feels is the most accurate explanation for why Yishmael is not a Malchus. By the way, the Zohar HaKadosh says that Klal Yisrael, so to speak, had kindness on Avraham Avinu. Avraham, why did you forsake us? Why did you daven uli Yishmael shematicha? Why did you do this to us? Why did you say Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha? You didn't do us any favors by davening for Yishmael. Let's come to a very interesting Gemara. Come back on your first sheet. We're going to examine number 6 and number 7. Very interesting. Famous Gemara. The Gemara says, Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, and some say Rabbi Simlai said that in the end of days, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring a Sefer Torah, and he's going to say, if you learned this, come and get your reward. And all the nations are going to come clamoring, yeah. No, don't worry. So Rome comes here and says, we did everything for Klal Yisrael. So very interesting. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, Shaitim Shabba'ilam, right? You fools, you did it for yourself. So I remember Rosh Yeshiva, I learned in Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim in New York, the Brisker Rav says the same thing. Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't say, what are you talking about? This is not for Klal Yisrael. No, the Rebbeinu Shalom is masking. Avada, the stores are for Klal Yisrael, and the money is for Klal Yisrael, and everything is for Klal Yisrael. But that's not why you did it. You didn't do it for that. So I'll leave you with the question. You talk about it over the Shabbos table. Really? So what if they didn't have it in the Kavanah to do that? Why was Og Melech HaBashan rewarded when Vayavai HaPolet Vayagid LaAvram? He was rewarded for saving, right, for telling him. Why? What was his kavanah? His kavanah was to rescue life. His kavanah that Avram should die. So you see, if you do a davar tov and you're mechavein l'ra, you're rewarded. So what's Rebbeinu Shalom saying? That's not why you did it? It's a good kasha, right? Think about it. Anyway, the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, after Rome, who comes in? Persia. My taima? Deha Chashiva Basra. Persia is next in line in Chashivas. And the Gemara says, they come to Rebbe Shalom, they said, Rebbe Shalom, on the second wide line. Harbe Gesham Goshanu, we made bridges. Harbe Krachim Kavashnu, we made cities, we conquered cities. Harbe Mechon Sasim, we made wars. The Kulam La Yasina, Lev Sholi Sokatei Shaska B'Torah. And Rebbe Shalom said, you fools, that's not why you did it. So the Gemara says, and when Persia saw that Rome was unsuccessful, why they come in? So the Gemara says, Persia said, Rome destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. That's why Hashem doesn't want to reward them. But we didn't, and therefore maybe we should get reward. Frek the Gemara. Why is Paras and Roim chashuv, and why aren't any of the other nations chashuv? The Gemara says, a davar pele. Mishum dahanach mashchi b'malchusayhu ad da'asi mashicha. Rome and Persia will last until the end of time. Just one question. Persia will last until... So I understand if Rome refers to the Western world, America, that we could understand. The Western world will last until the end of time. Persia... It's not talking about Iran. If you want to say it's talking about Iran and you're going to set up the last two nations standing as America and Iran, maybe if that makes you happy. Iran has nothing to do with the Persian Empire. They're probably of Oriental descent. The Persia today, Iran today, has no connection to Paras of ancient times. They're not their hair, not ethically, not spiritually. What do you mean Persia will last until the end of time? Really? Persian Empire is long gone. Let me tell you one more Gemara. Gemara in Yuma. Gemara in Yuma says, a groisa machlokes. Who will be the last nation standing? Now, based on the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, we know it's either who, it's either Rome, it's either Edom or Paras. But bottom line, is it Edom or is it Paras? So we already saw it might be a machlokes between the Medrash Shachar Toiv, who says Yishmael Edom, and Rashi, who says Edom Yishmael. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you better, it's Machlokes Amoraim. But wait a second, says the Gemara, but I thought it's either Paras or Edom. And Rashi said Edom or Yishmael. Look in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi, Amar Rabbi, so this is Rabbi, Asida Roimi Shatipo Biad Paras. In the end of days, the last nation standing will be Persia. The Gemara continues a few lines down. Amar Rabbi Rachan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Loi, Asida Roimi Shatipo Biad Paras. And then the Gemara says, Amar Rav, Asida Paras Shatipo Biad Roimi. So, Herstamai say, hear what's going on here? In the end of days, there'll be two nations standing. Either Persia or Edom. Who will defeat who? Rabbi says, Rome, America will fall to Persia. Rav says, no, Persia will fall to Edom. So, wait a second here. You have a Gemara in Avodah Zarah saying that Persia will last until the end of time, and there's another Gemara that says Persia will beat Edom. Hayitachein. So there's an incredible Maral. Maral says in a few Mekaimais, you know why Yishmael is not one of the Dalit Goliois? He is. Which one is he? Yishmael is Paras. Why is he called Paras? It doesn't matter where the country is or what the ethnicity of the country is. The Gemara defines the Malchus and the Goliois based on their personality. What's the personality of Persia? Krachim kavashnu milchama isasinu yadoi bakol v'yad kol boy. War, 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 war. The character, the personality of Paras is war. That's who Yishmael is. Yishmael is one of the Dalit Goliois. Which one? Paras. Paras is a code word for Yishmael. That's what the Maral says. So Paras is a code word for Yishmael. Now we understand why the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, which two umos will last till the end of time? Edom and Yishmael. And we see, they are. And who's going to beat who? Edom or Yishmael? So what's going on? The Medrash Shocher Tov seems to say Yishmael Edom. Rashi seems to say Edom Yishmael. It's the oldest machlokes in the world. You know who argues about that? Rabbi and Rav. Rabbi says Yishmael will defeat Rome. Yishmael will defeat America. Rav says, no, sorry. America will defeat Yishmael. So it's a machlokes Rav and Rabbi, according to Maral. Who will stand last, Edom or Yishmael? It could be it's a machlokes in the Midrashim. I found an amazing thing in the writings of Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I didn't put it on the sheet. It's a Pesach shir. If you remember this one. Reb Chaim Kanievsky writes in the time of the Quran, Chad Gadya. Conveniently, Chad Gadya has 8 characters. You know, you have the kid, and you have what goes next? The cat, and the dog, and the stick, and the fire, and the water, and the shar, and the shoichet, and the malach hamas. 8 characters, and 8 golios. Conveniently. So now the question is, who's the shoichet, and who's the malach hamas? I think if Esav and Yishmael applied for both, they would both be very worthy candidates for both jobs. Reb Chaim says the shoichet is Edom and the malach hamas is Yishmael. Chaim Kanievsky says we paskin like Rebbe Asida Roimi Shetipo Biyad Paras. Yishmael will be the last nation standing. But I don't know if it's a matter of sak. The Medrash Shocher Tov says Edom. It's machlokes Rav and Rebbe. You know, you could read it the other way. My grandfather said he met the angel of death in Amalek in the concentration camps. Dr. Mengele. He was not from Yishmael. That's more like Edom. 2 ways to go. But one thing we know for sure, the last 2 standing nations will be Edom and Yishmael. Let's talk about this. We're basically living through a time where we see the transition of Golus Edom to Golus Yishmael. When you look around the world, you look what's going on in New York today, all over the world. The tsaras that the Yidden face today are the tsaras of Golus Yishmael. There's an interesting concept. We know the Gemara says in Sukkah on Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis. Look at number 10. Vayarini Hashem arba charashim. Hashem showed me the 4 craftsmen. Maninu arba charashim. Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna. Amar Rav Shimon Chasida. Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef. Eliyahu. Kohen Tzedek. There's a concept of Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. You know, why do we need 2 Mashiachs? What's the purpose of 2 Mashiachs? It's interesting. The Medrash Tanchuma says, what is Mashiach ben Yosef called? Meshalchei regel hashor zeh Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is called a shar. Yosef is compared to a shar. Bechar shoyroi hadarloi. Chamor zeh Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David is called Chamor. Ani v'roichiv al Chamor. Zayar also says, La Yasser Shem Yehuda, da Mashiach ben David, Mechayki b'hin Raglav, da Mashiach ben Yosef. There's a concept of 2 Mashiachs. Mashiach ben Yosef is a shar, Mashiach ben David is a chamor. Why do we need 2 Mashiachs? Very simple, says the Gra. Came across the Gra, incredible Gra, it's quoted in the Svarim. The Gra is commentary to the Safra D'Tzniusa. Says Davar Ayam Menorah. Says the Gra, you can't plow with an ox and a donkey together. It's bad news. Don't plow with an ox and a donkey together. What could be wrong with plowing with an ox and a donkey? I could think of worse things. No! Don't plow with an ox and a donkey. You know why? Because Kayin and Hevel, we know the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer says you can't mix Kayin and Hevel. You know why you're not allowed to wear shatnez? Because Cain's carbon was what? Mipri Adama. Flax, linen. Hevel's carbon was sign, wool. Don't mix Cain and Hevel. You know what's going to happen if you mix Cain and Hevel? You're going to join Esav and Yishmael together. And if Esav and Yishmael ever come together, they will destroy the world. Esav and Yishmael together. Esav is a shar. Esav is compared to an ox. Parim abirim. Yishmael is compared to a chamar. Shavu lachem pai im achamar. Says the Goin, don't mix the ox and the donkey together. If you mix the ox and the donkey together, you're combining the koyach of Esav and koyach Yishmael. They will destroy the world. I'll tell you what my grandfather writes in his memoirs. He was in Auschwitz. And he saw Eichmann, Yamach Shemai V'Zichroi, in Auschwitz. And Eichmann invited a special guest into Auschwitz, the Mufti from Jerusalem. And my grandfather said they would march Yidden in front of Eichmann and the Mufti, and they would hit them in a way that the Yid would never be able to reproduce. And that was their entertainment. And my grandfather writes, he saw Eichmann and Mufti, they were kemat hugging each other, rejoicing over the downfall of the Jew. My grandfather says that's the kiyum of this inyan, of Ayelech Esav el Yishmael. When Esav and Yishmael come together, it's Auschwitz. That's the koyach of Churban Ha'olam. The koyach of the shar and the koyach of the chamar. Says the Goin is megala, tremendous thing. V'zasoid Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef takes us out of the gullus of the shar. Yosef is a bechar shoyroi. He takes us out of gullus Edom. Mashiach ben David is Ani v'roichev al chamar. He takes us out of the gullus of the Shavu lachem pa'im hachamar. The reason why we need two Mashiachs is because there are two gulusim. You tell me, according to the Goin, which gullus happens first, gullus Edom or gullus Yishmael? It seems Mashiach ben Yosef takes us out of gullus Edom, Mashiach ben David takes us out of gullus Yishmael. Gullus Yishmael is later on in the game. By the way, the Kavayashar, Parak Chav Beis, take a look at number 17. There are two koychos hatuma in the world, Shar and Chamar. Chamar is Yishmael, Shar is Edom. The gematria of Edom and Yishmael is 502. Gematria, the number of years that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov lived in this world. Let me tell you a little bit about Yishmael. Everybody knows the Vart, Rabbi Sholem Diskin, Huyeh, Pera Adam. We know in Lashon HaKodesh, first we say the noun, and then we say the adjective. Adam Chashav, Adam Tzaddik, Adam Mitzuyan. So it should say, Huyeh, Adam Pera. What's Pera Adam? The answer is no. You know who Yishmael is? Their essences, they're a wild chamar. They're a pera. You know what kind of pera? Not the kind that's in the zoo. They should be. The kind that looks like an Adam. That's what kind. The adjective of the para. They are a para. The adjective, what kind of para? The Adam kind of para. Let's explain that a little bit. Incredible Kliyakar. Kliyakar says that Rivka comes to Shem, and Shem says, don't sweat it. What are you so worried about? What are you so nervous about? Shnei goyim bevitnech, shnei lumimach. So wait a second. What was Rivka worried about? So imagine Shem Ve'ever says, look, you're going to have one kid who's a tzaddik, and the other kid, he's going to be a mass murderer. You're going to have tsaras from this kid like nobody's business. And Rivka foresaw all of the tsaras that will emerge from Esav, and oh, I feel much better. You know, he showed her crusades, pogroms, halakha. Oh yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, one kid is taka going to be a big tzaddik, but what was the big nechama over here of Shnei Goyim Bevitnei? Says the Kliyakar, there's a big nechama here. Because she was worried. The last time one of the others had two kids, it was Yitzchak and Yishmael. And Yishmael is so rotten to the core, nothing good ever came out of Yishmael. There have been a lot of tremendous gerim from Esav. For example, Nero Kezar was about to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, and the kid said a pasuk, and Nero, Arak v'azov v'nafak minei, Rameir! Rameir came from Esav. Shmai Naftalion came from Esav. Antoninus! If not for Antoninus, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have Mishnah, we wouldn't have Gemara. It's only because Antoninus protected Rabbi that we have Torah Shabbat Peh. So yeah, Esav hasn't been the best guy in the world, but he could change. Good things could come out of Esav, says the Kli Yakar. Never in the history of Klal Yisrael has a really righteous convert come out of Yishmael that was contributed to the Jewish people. Interesting. Why is that? Says Maral. Maral says a frightening thing. Maral says, there's Doimim, there's Sameach, there's Chai, there's Medaber, and then the Kuzari says there's Yisrael. But all people are Bnei Adam, right? They all have a neshama. Every human being has a neshama, right? Wrong. Some human beings don't have the same level neshama. They're not the same level of Bnei Adam. Says Maral, you ever notice, in America, in England, people look like a mensch. I saw in London, you have kids going to school. Even girls, they wear a jacket and a tie. They look like a mensch. They wear big day Adam. They dress like a human being. And Yishmael, they wear shmatas. They don't wear begadim. Even their leaders, they're not embarrassed to walk in front of, together with diplomats. You have a guy, Donald Trump, call him whatever you want. At least the man wears a suit. He's not wearing a rag and putting a. They don't wear in houses. They live in huts. They don't live in big. They don't wear big day Adam. They don't live in Batei Adam. You know why? They don't have the same level neshama. They don't have nishmas Adam. What are they? They're para. They're para. They're para. The Zayah writes, I think it's on the sheet, number 19, I believe. Ein lecha galos kasha liYisrael k'may galos Yishmael. It's the shvaris of all the galosim. Says Baal HaTurim clearly says the last galos will be galos Yishmael. Famous Baal HaTurim says, the end of Chayei Sarah, the beginning of Toldos, it says about Yishmael, al pnei kol echav nafal ve'ele Toldos. Yitzchak is what? 208. Pinchas is 208. You want to know when Geula is happening? You want to know Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak? You want to know when the descendants of Yitzchak will flourish? Al pnei kol echav nafal. When Yishmael falls, Mashiach comes. Ba'atram says b'ferish. Kishayipol Yishmael ba'achris hayomim oz Yitzmach ben David. Like Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Shoichet azadai malach hamav says Yishmael. I'll tell you two more things. I have to share this with you. Do I have it here? Try to remember. The Ramban says, why do we suffer so much from Yishmael? Because the pasuk says that what happened was Sarah was not having children, so Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham, and immediately Hagar conceived. So Hagar said, you're a faker, you're a hypocrite, you're not a tzaddikas. You're living with him for 80 years, you can't have a kid. And Hagar was Nesaber and be a Rishina. So Hagar, hypocrite, she said to Sarah, you're a faker, ein toicha kabara. So Sarah comes complaining to Abraham. He says, why are you doing this to me? You don't speak up for me. Vataneha Sarai. Sarah abused Hagar. Says Ramban, because Sarah insulted Hagar, and Hagar was afflicted and pained, and Abraham let her do it, we suffer from Yishmael ad hayom hazeh. Don't hurt anyone's feelings. Don't even hurt a guy's feelings. Sarah abused Hagar. She afflicted Hagar. She hurt her feelings. V'ta'aneha Sarai. Because of that, the Ramban says we suffer from Yishmael ad hayom hazeh. Comes the Abarbanel, and I think one of the Balei HaTosfos, the Riva, says the same thing. No, it's not true. They argue on the Ramban. So what's wrong with what Sarah did? Because she afflicted her? So she's taking revenge. The Smag holds that the Isra of Nakama is only when somebody hurts you monetarily, but if someone hurts your feelings, you're allowed to get back at them. That's what the Smag paskins. Whether you're allowed to do that Lamaisa, there's a shita like that. Sarah was justified in insulting Hagar. She hurt her first. She said, you're a faker. Sarah was justified. The Riva says, based on the Smag, Sarah was justified. So I saw a davar oyam v'noira. The Chida writes, the Chida says that he saw in the writings of one of the Rishonim, Rav Yaakov Sakili, who's the Talmud of the Rashba. You know the famous story of how David HaMelech was born? Now Rizal brings down, Chida brings down, and I hadn't seen it in Rishonim. I was surprised to see it in a Rishon, that basically Yishai was worried. Yishai said, you know what, maybe Doeg is right. Maybe Taka, I'm also Lavai Bakal. Maybe because my grandmother was Rus, my children are puzzle. So Yishai had this great idea. He had an Einfal. He's going to marry a Shivcha. The kid's going to be an Eved. He'll free the kid, and now the kid is a pure Jew. So he told his wife, adios amigo, have a nice day, it's been nice knowing you. He was parish from his wife, and he made up to live with the Shivcha. This Shivcha was very loyal to the Balabusta of the house, and she told her, by the way, I have a meeting with your husband. And she made a deal with the wife of Yishai, you go instead of me. And the wife of Yishai went in instead of her. And Yishai never knew that it was his wife. He thought it was the Shivcha. And a few months later, when Eishes Yishai was pregnant, all the kids in the house said, the mother was Mezaneh. When the kid was born, they paskin David HaMelech is a mamzer. David HaMelech says this in Tehillim, Muzar ha'yisi le'echai. They threw him to the dogs. El kela v'chidasi. They paskin David was a mamzer. Yishai never knew it was his wife. That's the story. It's documented. It's well known. Says the Chida, Adavar Ayam Benaira. You know who this woman was? You know who this Shivcha was? This Shivcha was the Gilgal of Hagar. And because Hagar abused Sarah, like the Abarbanel, and like the Riva, she had to come back and be machnia and submit herself and subdue herself to Eishes Yishai, to be masakein the fact that she insulted Sarah Imenu. That's what the Chida brings down. I don't know if we could say such a thing, but I can't help but think, is this the only thing that Hagar has to come back to do? This is the only bad thing Hagar did, that she wasn't nice to Sarah? I could think of one other item that maybe Hagar has to come back for. And that is that she brought a chamor into the world. How about that? You don't think she has to come back for that? She insults Sarah, but it's okay that she brought the Pera Adam into the world? So how is Hagar going to be masakin, bringing the chamor into the world? Orchestrating, bringing into the world the antidote to Yishmael. The ani v'roichev achamar, David HaMelech. So she comes back to the world to orchestrate and to set up the conception of David HaMelech. So she was masakein, insulting Sarah, and she was masakein, the ani, she was masakein, the shvula chempayim hachamar. One last item. The Gemara at the Soif Makos. The Gemara tells a story. Ram Gamliel and Rav Tarfon and Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva, they come to the Har HaBayis, and they see the foxes prancing. It means you listen before, right? They see the foxes dancing on the Har HaBayis, and they're all crying. Makaim sha'amru v'hazar hakarav yumas v'achshav shu'alim holchubai. And Rabbi Akiva was laughing. And Rabbi Akiva said, no, this is a siman, a toiva liyisra. And they said, you're right, Rabbi Akiva. Akiva nichamtanu. What's the side of this Gemara? We've said many times in the past, it's kedai to end with. Somebody said over, he heard from Moshe Shapiro that the Chidah says this. I do not think the Chidah says this. It's not anywhere in the Kisvei Chidah. I found it though. Rabbi Avram Shor quotes Rabbi Binyamin Vitali, one of the Italian Mekubalim, that there are different ways of saying it. Shu'alim, if you unscramble it, could be spelled Yishmael. When you see the Shu'alim, when you see Yishmael prancing on the Har HaBayis, claiming, this is our Makaim, this belongs to us, this is our home. Yishmael has no shaykhus to the Har HaBayis. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. When Avram Avinu went to Har HaBayis, the Medrash says, he asked Eliezer and Yishmael, Vayaras hamakay merachak, do you see Shechina on the Har HaBayis? And Yishmael said no. And Avram said, so shvu lachem payim achamor, to the Har HaBayis you're a chamor, you have no understanding of Har HaBayis. So when you see those shu'alim, when you see Yishmael on the Har HaBayis, you know there's a transition. We're now in Galus Yishmael. But you know what's coming next? Al Pnei Kol Echav Nafal, the fall of Yishmael, and the ultimate rise of Klal Yisrael, the Eila Taldois Yitzchak. We hope that their Nefilah happens very, very soon, and we hope we should be Zoicha to Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach of the Shar, the Mashiach of the Chamar, and hopefully in this chus of learning the Torah of these two Mashiachim, we should be Zoicha to see it. B'mhera v'yameinu, Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.